I'd like to start by acknowledging that wherever we are in the world, it is likely that we're on the lands of the traditional people where we are. In Brisbane, that's the Yagara and Turrbal people. We'd like to acknowledge their elders past, present and emerging, and at least here in Brisbane recognise that sovereignty was never ceded, and there's still a lot of work to be done to reconcile that. Also like to recognise the people, some of the key people who have joined us today, who have already introduced themselves. Susan, Heidi and Tom have already been a great part of helping us with this project, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about what they're doing today. So thanks to those guys for being on the line, especially for joining us across time zones. It's been one of the challenges of organising this first webinar and something we aim to get better at. I know there was a number of people who couldn't join today because of the time zone debacle. So thanks to you guys who have managed to get here, and we're really excited to be sharing this with you. So our agenda overview quickly. We're going to start off by talking a little bit about what Matilda and I are doing and letting you guys know about the journey we've had so far. And then we're going to jump into a little bit about marine debris and data collection, which is something that we're passionate about, but you know, is sometimes a dry topic for people, and we want to make it more exciting. So we're including it today. We'll talk a little bit about the fundraising we've done, and some of the work that's happening internationally, and we'll give Tom an opportunity to talk there, and then everyone can ask as many questions as they like in the time that's left, which will hopefully be at least 15 or 20 minutes. We also, I just wanted to let you know, if you hover your mouse down the bottom of the screen, you'll see there's a chat box there. If there's like ideas that come up or questions that come up and you're like me and you swim around in your little goldfish bowl and 5 minutes later you've forgotten your question, please feel free to type it in that chat box, and either Matilda and I will answer it later, or maybe even as we're going. So yeah, hopefully Zoom is a revolutionary experience for you. I know the first time I used it, I was very excited. But Matilda's laughing because I'm somewhat of a nerd. So yeah, I get excited about those things. So I'm just going to do something really amazing here, which may or may not blow your mind, but I'm going to share my screen with you. If you bear with me for one moment, you'll hopefully be able to see what I see. Can everyone see what I'm seeing? Nod your head if you can. Excellent. Then I go into presentation mode. All right. So it's a little hard for me because I can't necessarily see all of you. So remember to use that chat box if you're having any technical troubles or anything else. So I'm going to start by introducing myself, and then I'll throw over to Matilda to introduce herself as well. So as you guys may or may not know, I'm Lucy of the team. I've been paddling kayaks since I was about 17, and it's been something that I've really loved and have pursued a lot of time in, but definitely have never done anything of this magnitude when it comes to paddling. I've done a couple of marathons that are about 110 kilometers long, but paddling 110 kilometers in one night and then being able to sleep for 5 days is a bit different to what we're about to take on. I first got passionate about marine debris when I was up in Cairns and got involved with the Tongariro Blue Foundation, which is, you know, it's pretty exciting to still have Heidi on the line, having been one of the persons who's inspired us so much to do what we're doing. So yeah, I've been doing conservation and adventure for most of my life, and I think it's what I'm most passionate about. I'll let Matilda introduce herself and talk a bit about how we met. All good?
Okay, hi everyone, I'm Matilde. I met Lucy a few years ago at the Sustainability Club at James Cook University in Cairns. When she first approached me a while back to do the trip with her, I'd done a number of short day trips kayaking with my dad, but nothing more than maybe 4 hours. So I was super excited to do it. And then I sort of called her back again a couple of hours later and went, wait, do you think I can actually do this? Is it going to be okay? And we talked it through and talked about the training and what needed to happen in the years leading up to it, to plan and stuff like that. And now we've done a few multi-day trips and a week-long trip around Fraser Island, which is very different to where we'll be going, but taught me a lot about what we'll be facing every day on the journey. So I'm feeling pretty confident now. And yeah, super excited. Like Lucy said, when I did my first cleanup with the Tongariro Blue, that's when I started getting really frustrated, and then I realized that a lot of that rubbish could be coming from me. So I thought that's where the seed planted in my brain that I need to do something about it. And then I looked up a few waste-free blogs, and that started my single-use plastic waste-free journey 2 years ago. So still hanging in there. And yeah, super excited to start this expedition.
Thanks, Matilde. We've got the transitions down now. So yeah, I think it's needless to say, this has been a learning journey for both of us around planning this expedition and also planning it single-use free. So I'll just go into what we're doing. So if you haven't already clocked it, we're paddling, kayaking around 2,000 kilometers, just over. We're doing it in kilometers because it speaks more to general audiences rather than nautical miles, which is what most people in the ocean use. We're doing it single-use free, and we're raising money for two amazing organisations, the Tongariro Blue Foundation here in Australia and the Living Oceans Society in Canada. And Karen sends her apologies for not being able to make it today. A part of our project, apart from doing the kayak trip, and is doing talks with people, running workshops and running cleanups, both in Australia and in Canada. And some of those cleanups, talks and workshops have already happened, and there's many more to come. So these are just some photos from the preparation for the expedition. In the top left-hand corner, you can see me half submerged upside down in the kayak as Rob Mercer is teaching us rescue and rolling skills. You've got in the middle there our preparation for the 7-day trip along the Fraser Coast, which Matilde talked about a bit. Very different conditions, around 37 to 39 degrees Celsius every day. So quite stark to what we'll be experiencing in Alaska and Canada, but we still argue that we were dealing with extreme exposure. So yeah, we'll have some different conditions over in Canada and Alaska. But the main thing is that we know we can do back-to-back days that are the distances we aim to cover. We trialed our plastic-free menu, and yeah, just knowing that we can also tolerate each other under, you know, favourable and less favourable conditions. So, and yeah, we dealt with all kinds of midges, mosquitoes, and for those who are not in Australia and don't know what dingoes are, they're a type of wild dog, and we had some sniffing around in our vestibules of our tents as well. So it was been some good experiences in there. Sue Bass has just joined us. Welcome, Sue, who's just joined us as well from the Powell River area. We're just getting to the slide to try and get you guys a visual of what we're actually doing. So that purple line that you can see down the coast of Alaska and Canada is our route plan, but very zoomed out. And a little bit closer looks like this. So it says we're starting in Juneau, but we're actually going to be dropped off in Glacier Bay in the Muir Inlet, and we'll be paddling up to a glacier before we start heading south, which we're both pretty excited about, although it looks like there has been some fairly significant retreat on that glacier, which means we might not get to the base of it, which is a little bit sad, but still exciting. So that's what our route looks like. I'm going to go to the next slide here. Some of these are just, especially for people in Australia, it can be hard to imagine where we're paddling looks like. So I just took some photos from people who have done the trip before. Susan Codrand up there is a woman who paddled through where we're going solo. It's a pretty amazing journey. Been reading her book for some tips. And yeah, it's just obviously a very beautiful landscape, but also has some pretty amazing wildlife in there too. So for those of you in Australia who haven't been in this area, this is a bit of what it looks like. These are some of the questions that a lot of people have asked that we thought we would answer. So I might, and we'll be answering some other questions later, obviously, but we thought we'd start with some FAQs. So I'll answer the first three and then I'll throw over to Mathilde. So, and I think this is probably a bit different for each of us. So you'll just get our interpretation of each question that we answer. So what are we most scared about? We've talked about this a little bit. Neither of us necessarily feel scared as such, which is just our nature. But what we're most concerned about, and what I'm most concerned about, is hypothermia. Being from the tropics and not having been in those conditions before, I think it will be hard work and about being very attentive to ensure that we have the right gear, that we're not taking unnecessary risks, and making sure that we don't end up in the freezing cold water as much as we can when we're kayaking. So I think that's one of my greatest concerns, is making sure that we don't get hypothermia. What I'm most excited about, to be honest, is seeing whales. I just want like orcas and humpbacks and dolphins as well playing around my boat. And yeah, I'm just so excited to imagine spending some close-up time with those incredible animals. What I will miss most, there's so many things. I don't miss things generally, but I think what I will miss is the ease of everyday life. Like when you get to camp and you have to empty your kayak and then drag everything up the beach and then set up a tent and do this and do that and do that. Instead, like, you know, normally you just like walk in your door and fall on your bed if you're tired and then like have a moment to relax. Whereas, you know, especially camping around bears. And I think I would just miss things being simple and easy. There'll always be like a little step or a complicated thing that we have to do. So, yeah, I think I will miss simplicity sometimes, although parts of the trip will be the most simple they can be. Yeah. I'm going to throw over to Mathilde for the next three questions.
Unmuted. Okay. So the next question is whether we'll feel as prepared as we could be. So I think in terms of gear, definitely as prepared as we could be. We've done a lot of research. We've talked to a lot of other kayakers and we've knuckled down our list pretty well. In terms of food, we are definitely as prepared as we could be, thanks to the Loopy Cafe over in Vancouver, who are waste-free and who have offered to pretty much help prepare and dehydrate all of our meals for 3 months. Breakfast, lunch, dinners, and snacks, plus extra soups and things like that. So that's like incredible, considering Lucy and I are both eaties and not very good foodies. So it probably would have been a little bit of a disaster if we were left in charge of that. And then being prepared, I think mentally we won't know until we start the trip, but feel pretty good based on what we've done in the past. So we'll see. Whether we think this will test our friendship, well, we've both lived together, we've done a few hikes and camping trips together, and I don't think we've ever had an argument together, so that's a pretty good sign in that we've known each other for about 6 years now. We do have some risk assessment things put in place. So for example, we will be sharing a tent, but we are also taking separate hammocks so that we can sleep in different places sometimes. Lots of people ask if we're going to be kayaking in a double kayak, to which we both respond, hell no. So we have our own separate single kayaks, which means that we will still paddle within shouting distance of each other. But if there's some days where we might want to paddle a little bit away from each other, that's possible. But I think we're both pretty good at voicing each other's, you know, if we have any issues and things like that, so there won't be any grudges and stuff like that happening. I just have to make sure that Lucy is well fed. So that should be okay. So what we think we'll feel at the end of the 3-month trip, I think we'll feel quite strong. We'll feel very tired, but we'll also feel a massive sense of achievement, not in just paddling 2,000 kilometers, but also knowing that we have hundreds of people following the journey, and that we've raised this issue with people who might not otherwise be on board with marine debris and plastics in the ocean. And now that they're coming in and seeing a bit of a more epic journey, then they want to come and join the journey with us, and hopefully they learn a few lessons along the way. So I think that'll be a really good feeling.
Sorry, just getting the changeover. Yeah, so hopefully that answers some of those common questions. Back to our slides. So this is just to touch on why we care. And we already did talk about that a little bit, but the ocean for Matilda and I is, and thanks Heidi for this great slide. This is from Tangaroa Blues educational kits that anyone can download at any time. Little plug there. But the ocean is like our place of recreation to begin with. So it's our place where we go for solitude and to be at one with nature. But not only that, it's such an integral part of our ecosystem function globally, our ability to survive and on this planet and to live, and to see it impacted in a way that's not necessary, in a way that we can change, and something that is a part of society that it only takes, getting rid of a couple of key products to change this picture. We don't often like to use too many of these shocking images, but it's important to know the reality. And the reality is that we're losing our wildlife because of plastics. And having seen this firsthand, it's not something you can forget. And, Matilda said that she did a cleanup, and that was the first moment that she realized that she was directly connected to it. One of my university lecturers made us do a plastic audit as an assignment. Good on him. And I thought I was pretty good until I counted every piece of plastic in my house, and then had to take a long, hard look in the mirror. So yeah, we care because it's important, and because our oceans are the thing that is close to our heart. This is what we do. So these are just some of the images from some of the cleanups that have happened recently. We've got photos from Chile Beach up in Cape York, and also from here in Brisbane. That middle photo was a cleanup we did with Kathmandu earlier last year, and had a lot of people come along, and we only cleaned up 200 meters of the Brisbane River, but we picked up 110 kilos of rubbish. And that was because those volunteers you see in that picture were dedicated to going ankle deep in mangrove mud to get every single piece of debris in the mangroves. If you haven't slouched around in Australian mangroves before, they are highly beautiful and amazing plants, but do create somewhat of a stinky mess. So I was well impressed with, being from the country, I thought maybe the city slickers wouldn't get muddy, but they proved me wrong. So we have been working hard to do cleanups and to, support what work Tangaroa Blue is doing here in Australia. And you can see on the left there a pile of plastic, and you can see Matt in the top left-hand corner counting, and that's a part of the data collection we'll talk about later. But yeah, doing cleanups, collecting data, making a difference in our area. But to quote Heidi, if all we do is clean up, that's all we'll ever do. So we've also been doing a lot of work to promote plastic-free living. So in the right-hand corner there, you can see some really cute photos of my friends' kids making wax wraps so that their lunch boxes can go to school plastic-free. We've got Who Gives a Crap toilet paper, our little kit in the middle there, that's Matilda's kit she takes everywhere with her to make sure that she doesn't have to use plastic when she travels. And our shopping down the bottom, being vegetarian is very helpful to eating plastic free. So that's just a lot of vegetables from our local farmers market. Oh, for some reason that picture was separate. We also are pretty excited about what the world is doing. It's amazing to see, you know, for example, the Queen deciding that there was going to be no plastic in any of her palaces, and I just love thinking, like, if the Queen doesn't need a straw to be a lady, nobody does. So yeah, and you know, in countries like India and France and states like Queensland, where we are, Western Australia, starting to ban disposable plastics, get rid of water bottles, ban the bag, all of that stuff. So there's this huge movement around us, and we do believe that now is the time to get this change to be a reality throughout the world. So yeah, what happened so far? Multiple cleanups here in Australia. We've had several supporters pledge to go plastic free. Our local area, we've had some people decide to get our suburb plastic free. So they've started a whole campaign locally, which has been amazing to see. We've got school students learning how they can make a difference at home and at school, and we're pretty excited to share some stuff they've sent us today. And so far we've raised, and Matilda will talk to this a bit later, $8,918 for Haiti at Tangaroa Blue and for Karen at the Living Oceans Society. So we're pretty proud to be supporting the work of those great organisations. There's just a little bit of information about how you can follow us, but you probably already are if you're on this. But it's also an opportunity to talk about some of the groups that have supported us. We've been amazed by the support we've had, and I'll let Matilda talk about it in more detail later, but it's just been incredible to know that people want to be a part of this, and the majority of people who've got on board with us have done it because of the conservation elements. So you know, we've got groups like Werner Paddles and Boreal Designs, Aquapack, which are all adventure organisations. Aquapack, Boreal is doing our dry bags, Boreal Designs kayaks, and our paddles, Werner Paddles, our paddles, and they're all getting on board because of this effort to keep our ocean clean. Matilda already mentioned Loopy, and Cardzilla's doing some promotion for us with making us badges and that kind of thing. I think I've got one somewhere here. And also, you know, we are women and we have to deal with having menstrual cycles. So we're pretty happy to be using menstrual cups. I'm going to say it on our paddles so that we don't leave that waste behind either. Now, we have some questions to answer. This has been the most heartwarming experience for us. We've had schools from Canada and Australia send us questions to be answered on this webinar. So we're going to answer them now, and we'll have open question time at the end. These questions, I'll answer some second, but I'm going to go over to Matilda, who's going to answer some questions from the Arden Elementary School in Courtenay, British Columbia. It's amazing to just have the interest of these young people who are, you know, going to be the future stewards of our oceans. So over to you, Matilda.
Okay, so hello Arden Elementary School. We're recording this. So Arden Elementary School is sending in questions all the way from Courtenay in British Columbia over in Canada. So I've picked one question from each class. The first one is from Miss Sue's class, and it is, have you ever directly helped a marine animal? So I had volunteered in Cairns for quite a few years at the Cairns Turtle Rehabilitation Centre over on one of the islands. And on that island, we often had probably an average of 8 turtles of different species of sea turtles at the centre. They'd come in with injuries from boats, but a lot of the time they'd come in because they'd ingested plastic, and then since then had gotten really sick. So we would go to the centre and we'd help cut up cut up squid and feed it to the turtles and scrub their backs and clean their tanks and things like that. So that was a very eye-opening experience for me, because then I could go snorkeling in the harbour directly outside of the centre and see all the healthy green sea turtles and hawksbill turtles, and know that I'd been helping their populations get back on board. They're under a lot of pressure at the moment because of plastics in our ocean and because of water quality and things like that. So so I loved helping out with the turtles. Another question is from Miss Smith's class, and that's, how many beaches have you already cleaned up? So that's a tough question. Lucy and I have been on quite a few Tongaroa Blue beach cleanups, probably about 10, I guess, where we've gone all the way up to the tip of Australia, or around Cairns where we used to live, on some of the islands around there. So that's helping out with lots of other volunteers, picking out rubbish all day and then sorting it at the end of the day. But we both, whenever we go and do clean up, whenever we go and walk on the beach, for example, I've got dogs in Cairns, we usually take a rubbish bag and things like that, and that way we can pick up any rubbish that we find, which is great, because other people walking on the beach see you doing that, and then they join in, and then you notice other people also picking up rubbish. So without even talking to anyone, you have that effect, which is pretty powerful. And then we've also, as Lucy had mentioned before, helped run 3 cleanups in Brisbane since we've been here for the last 6 months. So lots of cleanups will continue on into the future, and we're going to do one big one at the end of our paddle as well with the Living Oceans Society. And we're trying to figure out logistics and see if we can do a cleanup along the way while we're kayaking on one of the islands with some other people. So we'll see if we can line that up. Great question. Next question is from Mr. Lamont and Miss Grant's class, and it is, where will you stay along the way? So we will be sleeping in our tent in our hammocks, and we'll be camping in different campsites along the way. They're not sites, most of them aren't sites where you have toilets and picnic tables and things like that. It's sites where we've found them on blogs online, and we've read about them in books, or we've just had a look on Google Maps and seen which areas don't have cliffs or rocks, or which areas have some trees that we can hang our hammocks from. So, and sometimes we will be kayaking for quite a few hours each day, and we'll arrive at the campsite, and it's possible that we might see a bear on the island, or maybe some bear poo or some bear prints, and then we'll have to keep on paddling until the next one. So I'm sure you'll hear lots of stories about that. Well, hopefully not lots, maybe just some. Okay, and over to Lucy with 3 more questions.
Great. So these questions are coming from a school in central Queensland called Tieri State School, and I've got a couple to answer here, and we will be answering all of the questions. We got a lot of questions on a separate video that was sent to the schools, so don't worry kids, they'll all be answered. The first one is, where will you get drinking water from, and how will you carry it if you're not using plastic bottles? So for those of you who are coming in from Canada or other places, Australia doesn't have bountiful glacial streams to fill water bottles from all the time, and water can actually be really hard to access. So on some of our trips, we've actually had to carry a lot of our water from the start, and actually when we did our trip on Fraser Island, we ended up hailing down some sailors to get some extra water, because we were worried about where we were going to get our next batch of water from. So it's always a good consideration. While we're in Canada, we fortunately have access to a lot of freshwater rivers that are coming straight from glaciers that are nice and clean, and we're not worried about running out of water while we're going along. We will be carrying sacks with us that are made from a material, and inside it they have a foil bag. So now obviously, you know, that's not the most sustainable, but it is multi-use. So we've had them for a year or so now, and I've had those bladders for 5 or 6 years. So yeah, we will be carrying water with us. About 8 litres of water will be in our boats at all times. So we're not going to be using single-use plastic bottles on our trip, that's for sure. Matilda's showing everyone your reusable water at the moment, water bottles, sorry. So you definitely don't need plastic water bottles to carry your water around in everyday life. You can take your own reusable water bottle with you. Another question is from, so that question was from Felicity and Xavier. Our next question is from Olivia, Addison and Keely. And I've combined two questions here. What if you get lost and what if you get separated? So I've combined it to what if we get lost or separated? So you'll be very glad to know that we have emergency positioning devices on us at all times. So in the chance that everything goes wrong and we are lost or separated and we need help, all we have to do is press a button on our personal flotation device that we will have on us at all times, which will send a signal to the emergency response team, either the Coast Guard, either in Canada or Alaska, depending on where we are, and they will come and get us. Obviously, we have a lot of plans in place for that not to happen, but if it does happen, we have backup. We also have a support team who will be helping us along the way. They won't be on the ground necessarily, but we'll always be able to contact them, get guidance. We'll also be, oh, I don't want to restart. Remind me in 12 hours. Sorry, guys. My computer wants to restart. But yeah, we will be making sure that we have our GPS with us, we have Navionics, and we also have physical charts. So because we don't want to take lots of batteries, we'll be working on solar, but solar doesn't always work if there is no sun. So we have 45 physical charts we will be taking with us to make sure. Charts are maps for the ocean, for those of you who don't know, and that'll help us make sure we don't get lost. The last question we're going to answer is from Mackenzie. What type of food will you eat? Now, this is an important question because we're doing it plastic free. So we couldn't just buy food from the shop because it all comes in plastic, most of it, especially the stuff that lasts long enough. So Loopy Cafe in Vancouver is helping us to prepare 3 months of meals. We'll be eating in the mornings lots of chia seeds and oats to keep us going for lots of long time. At lunchtime, we'll be eating curries and stir fries and different things like that. But all of our meals will be dehydrated. So that means we dry them out and suck all the moisture out of them. And all we have to do is put them in water and heat them up, and then we'll be able to eat them. We're going to release a little bit of a video soon that shows you all of the preparation for that. But basically, we wanted to make it repeatable so that anyone could do it. So what we're wrapping our food in is newspaper. Each meal gets wrapped in 3 layers of newspaper, which goes inside a dry bag. In one dry bag, we have 2 days worth of food, and that dry bag goes inside another dry bag. At the moment, we've got food in those dry bags we made a month ago, and we're waiting to see if it will last a month in storage, because some of our resupply points will be waiting for us for a month or more, and we need to know that they won't go moldy. And if it doesn't work, we'll come up with plan B. So that's some of those questions. Thanks for sending them in. It was really, really great to have those questions to answer. So that is the end of our slideshow. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and go back to your beautiful faces. Dennis has joined us now as well. Hi, Dennis. Dennis is one of our paddling buddies and has helped with a lot of our training. So shout out to him. Next, we are going to head over to Matilda. So I'm going to unmute her and mute myself.
Okay, so now we'll be hearing from some of our wonderful guest speakers just about data collection and what's been happening around the world in terms of beach cleanups and data collection. Data collection is super important, as I'm sure you'll hear in the next couple of minutes, because then you can make significant changes using that information as you have evidence. So, and I can tell you now that when you're doing beach cleanups and you're sitting, for example, at Chile Beach up on the Cape of Australia, and you're sitting in the same area for 10 minutes picking up rubbish, and you've been told that you can't pick up anything smaller than a bottle cap because otherwise we'd be there for months of the year, and you're doing that, and then as you're picking up that rubbish, you're watching more rubbish float in from the ocean to the same beach. Knowing that that information and that data that's being collected is then going out for greater purposes is definitely what keeps you going. So we're going to now unmute Heidi Taylor from Tangaroa Blue Foundation, who will tell us AMDI database.
So well done, girls. I am pretty excited to be in San Diego at the moment because we've been talking data and how it can be used now for almost 3 days at this international conference. And it's been great to share some experiences with everybody here on how we've actually used data in Australia. And it sounds like we're actually ahead of the game in some cases. And I know more than many people on how frustrating and how overwhelming it can be that once you've just collected that 200,000 items off Chile Beach, that then you've got to empty it and go through it and count it all. But as Lucy said before, if all we do is clean up, that's all we'll ever do. So we really need that data to be able to facilitate the change. So when the AMD database was developed, it was developed purely to help identify the source. So we not only collect information of something being perhaps like a plastic drink bottle, we actually also try and record the barcode and the brand so we can identify where that bottle might have come from. There is a huge amount of variety of sources for things.
Heidi, we've lost you for a second. Looks like she's frozen. She seems to have fine internet until now. Is she frozen for everyone else? Yeah, okay. I might just quickly message her. Technology has let us down and she's out of the meeting. Okay, well, oh, here she is back again. No? Oh, unmute.
You there?
Yep, we have you again. Oh, there we go. You're back.
Okay, sorry about that. I don't know where you got to. Cool. All right. What was the last thing that you heard?
Basically, you're saying about the barcodes, that you try and record barcodes.
Okay, so the barcodes let us identify the country of origin, perhaps of a water bottle, and that will tell us whether we're dealing with a local litter issue or whether we've got something perhaps coming from cargo boats or ocean currents. And that information is vital if we actually want to figure out how to stop that item from ending up on our coastlines, because if we just assume that we know the source, then potentially we're not actually going to get the right solution. So through the AMD database, we've been able to gems back to the source. We've been able to get legislative change. We've actually even been able to find an illegal fishing fleet from Vietnam out in the middle of the Coral Sea near the Great Barrier Reef. And that's because we're collecting this really, really detailed level of data. And it actually is not really difficult once you get the hang of it. We're about to release an app, so hopefully that'll make it even easier for people to record their data. And at the conference here, we've been talking with other national hubs from around the globe on how we can all work together to work on source reduction plans on an international framework, as well as dealing with what's coming out of Australia. So exciting. Data is gold. It's evidence. Without it, we'll never get change. So it's definitely worth the effort of collecting it.
Thanks so much, Heidi. That's really great to hear. I'm excited to see the app as well. That is very exciting news. Okay, so we're going to head over to Susan now. Susan's joined us from the Great Canadian Shoreline Cleanup, and they do similar work over in Canada. So I'm going to unmute you now, Susan, so you can share with us.
Great. Just getting the screen share to go. Okay. So I'm just going to go through a pretty quick slideshow. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. So if you're not familiar with the Great Canadian Shoreline Cleanup, we do have a very strong citizen science data component, which I'll get into. But just a very short overview. We all understand the need for shoreline cleanups and why, but our program, where it began, was actually back in Vancouver in 1994. So we're very excited that we're in our 25th cleanup season. It started as a September cleanup that has now progressed to a year-round thing, as we recognize litter is a problem throughout the year, and it's up to us and others to help promote the solutions. So I'm on the OceanWise side of things, but we also work with WWF to help deliver this program across the country. It's a national network, and our cleanups are really led by volunteer groups for other volunteers to join. So it's a really great diverse network of all different backgrounds of people who want to make a difference for our shorelines and coasts. So since '94, we've had over 700,000 Canadians, and we really want to also broaden what the definition of a shoreline is, and that's anywhere land connects to water. So you can see from this chart here in the lower right, it's rivers, lakes, even that storm drain connection is really important. So even if you can't see the water, if you're in a park or if you're walking down the streets, it's also a great place to have a positive impact on our shorelines. So I'll go through this slide pretty quickly. We're all very familiar with the issues are with litter. The four main ones are for wildlife: entanglement and ingestion. We have some examples. The bird with the ingestion, a lot of people have seen this one. Entanglement, this was actually a seal pup with a strapping band that was rescued in Vancouver with the Marine Mammal Rescue Center and later released. Invasive species can travel on various things. This is a foam block that was on the west coast of BC, and microplastics. You can see in this hand here, you probably actually can't even see it on this slide, but this was a sample taken from Lake Ontario just a few years ago. So why do we collect litter data? So we're not only having people organize cleanups, but we're having them take that extra step to quantify what they're collecting. So you can look at all of the trash bags and know how many coffee cups are in there, how many cigarette butts, what are the minor and major sources of litter. And as citizen science, it's a really great opportunity. As you're collecting information, you're able to, even just the act of that extra step to count helps you reflect more, so that when you're sharing this with your friends, getting that word of mouth going and becoming a movement, you are better even understanding it. I find even as people who are very aware, you'll still leave a cleanup with something else of a takeaway. We also act on a local scale, but we contribute globally to the International Coastal Cleanup. And the last 2 points, again, I just mentioned already, reflecting on your personal behaviors and having a real clear measure of what your impact is. So we find a really good recognition and reinforcement tool for our volunteers. In this image here, this is actually one of our youth volunteers who's been leading cleanups for maybe 6 or 7 years now, essentially growing up by leading cleanups for his community. So this is actually a look at our data card. If you're a bit of a data nerd, this slide might get you excited. You can see they're pretty common items to find. So you'll certainly find other items on the shoreline than what's recorded on the card, but we've taken this down according to the International Coastal Cleanup, what's recorded globally, and tried to identify a few things that we typically find across Canada. Some regions might find more of one certain item than others, but we have the very most likely to find items, and you'll recognize some trends here: a lot of single-use disposables, fishing gear, other types of miscellaneous packaging, from personal hygiene items, and something we've really wanted to start focusing on is that tiny trash, so before it gets to that microplastic stage. And these are some of the results we've been having. So there's a visual under this table here of the distance and weight we collected across Canada last year. So with more than almost 60,000 registered participants, we went equal to the distance of almost 3 times around Prince Edward Island, and the equivalent of 10,000 Canada geese, 50 moose, and 50 walrus in weight from trash. But it's also important to recognize that weight is an important metric, but often the tinier items are the most troublesome, so they won't really be reflected in the weight. And that's why we look to the items. So this is our Dirty Dozen. And as mentioned just earlier when I was looking at the data card, the thing, if you look at these, there's a lot of single-use disposable items, a lot of plastic materials, and a lot of things that have reusable alternatives. So the third item, plastic bottles, I'm sure everyone here has a water bottle that they carry around and reuse. Food wrappers, there's other ways that you can look to package your food, make your own foods. Bottle caps, paper materials, all sorts of items. But we found for the very first time, tiny plastic and foam was at the top of the list. It was used to be cigarette butts, which is still very high, but tiny plastic and foam were the top of the list, which definitely an indicator that it's in high numbers. It's not necessarily that all of a sudden there was a jump. I think of it as that now there's a growing awareness, and when people are recording it, they're actually starting to focus on that number. And as you can see in this picture below, it can be a bit of a tedious work. It's to an extent a bit of an estimate, but we're pretty confident and impressed by what our volunteers put in each year to record their data. Looking at it from a category perspective, again, percentage-wise, tiny trash and single-use food and the beverage are at the top, followed by smoking-related, and then much lower extent, fishing-related gear, other trash, and personal hygiene. And just a fun slide in here that if you can think of an item, it's been found on a shoreline cleanup. Everything from dinosaur toys to a wedding dress, an Elvis costume, water guns. This bottle of champagne was found with an empty ring box. We're not sure if it was an engagement proposal gone wrong, gone right, we're not sure. And then I just want to conclude on some actual concrete examples of what our volunteers have done. So all of this data is great, but what good is it if it's just sitting in a database somewhere? So we had some students a few years ago in Ontario at one of the local secondary schools. They went to their city hall and council and talked to them with litter data on cigarette butts to get more receptacles installed. The very popular program Blue Flag last year started to do public education campaigns for cigarette butts at Wasaga Beach. So that's a program that they're also starting to recognize the importance of how this litter data can get them further. One of our great volunteers, also in Ontario, she's been doing regular cleanups, but also on her own doing these daily litter blitzes. And these are her findings from last year. She's displayed them in an artful way. But the result of this is she's been able to go to her local council to show the need to increase the number of waste bins found near her shoreline. And then we have an example from the West Coast from a naturalist club that we're finding this special type of foam in docks over the years. You can see that truck that they filled after one cleanup, and they've been able to use that to make changes on the use of that type of foam. And then before I conclude, just a reminder of some of the top tips of how you can use your data to be like these volunteers is to share your results. Tell other volunteers, let your friends know, your family and coworkers, your municipality if you want to make a change. Numbers speak really powerful. If you want to have a little bit of fun with it, you can maybe try to host a trivia night with your friends. If you're a teacher, this is a great exercise to do with your students. And then also for everyone to look at these results over time. Is anything changing? If yes, why? If no, what else can be done? And that's what we have.
Thanks so much for that, Susan.
No problem.
You just have to stop sharing your screen.
Yep. Share. There you go. Excellent.
Awesome. I think it's so great to hear from both Heidi and Susan about these two different ways of collecting data, or well, very similar ways, but you know, that we're collecting data in Canada and in Australia. And you know, to even myself, having experienced in Port Douglas, near where I'm from, I had the privilege of doing a workshop with Tangaroa Blue, creating a source reduction plan. So from the data that Heidi was mentioning, the data collection for our local area there, we had about 13 years of data, I think, and we knew that bait bags, coffee cups and plastic bags were the most common debris in Port Douglas. And so then we could create a source reduction plan for that community to talk about how we were going to deal with that waste. And the reason why, like one of the reasons why we're really passionate about having more of these conversations is that, you know, this stuff is happening around the world and our oceans are global. So it's really, you know, great that we can collaborate more and have a space to inspire people about what can be done on this side of things. Heidi is in the middle of a conference, as she said, so hasn't been able to prepare as much, but I wanted to show you guys the data sheet from Tangaroa Blue that just happened to be in my drawer here. So it's very similar to the one at the Great Shoreline Cleanup. So we have bits about the type of debris and where it fits into. And this is just that for volunteers who go out on cleanups and run their own cleanups, the database online, if you're an experienced data nerd like Matilda and I, then you can go way more detailed if you wish. So I think like it, just from what Susan showed then with the results and impact that you guys are having over there and here in Australia, there is a way that we can stop this, and it is tangible and it is possible. We just need more people to be inspired about it and have those conversations. So, you know, the takeaway, we've got like 10 people on this call. Hopefully we can double that for our second webinar when we're halfway through the trip and people want to see our sunburnt, whiplashed faces. Then hopefully we can get some more people on by talking about, you know, how important this work is. So like, I think, you know, I don't want to keep cleaning up beaches. And it was interesting, one of the students asked, how many beaches have you cleaned up? It's like, well, maybe we've only cleaned up 5 beaches, but how many times have we cleaned it up is the real question. And how many times are we going to have to clean it up before this stops? So we want to create a future where those kids who are asking us questions don't have to spend their lives cleaning up the same beaches that we cleaned up. So next, I believe I'm going to throw back to Matilda, and she's going to talk a little bit about some of the dollars that we've been fundraising.
Okay, so Lucy did mention before that we are fundraising, we hope to fundraise at least $20,000 by the end of our trip, and we're about at the $9,000 mark at the moment. So 10,000 of that will go to the Living Oceans Society and 10,000 will go to Tangaroa Blue. We knew that we wanted to donate to Tangaroa Blue because we've been with them right from the beginning. With the Living Oceans Society, we did a bit of research around what was happening in Canada, and we wanted to raise money for the organizations that were not for profit and, you know, still applying for grants and things like that in order to be able to do their cleanups. And it is quite shocking when you do know the figures of how much cleanups cost. For example, the beach cleanup that I did up in Chile Beach in Australia would have cost about $15,000 to get all of those volunteers up, feed them, dispose of the rubbish for a week-long trip. We've got a little flyer on our Chuffed page where people can donate, but we've also got some other figures where $500 is 25 minutes of helicopter lift time for the Living Oceans Society. They do remote beach cleanups in the middle of nowhere, and the only way they could get it out is by helicopter. So hopefully that $10,000 each organization can go a long way. Obviously it's the beginning and it's a portion of what they need every year, but in doing so we're raising a lot of awareness for both of those organizations, and hopefully some of those donations will be ongoing. So pretty excited about that. We also want to talk a little bit about how much support we've gained throughout this. So it's been a very big learning curve for me and also for Lucy, just about contacting people and seeing what they say in return. So we've just contacted everyone that we've thought about, all the ideas that popped into our head. We've sent them an email and said, hey, are you interested in partnering with us? Our initial partnering in the Vancouver Aquarium and OceanWise was due to a friend that we both went to university with, who saw an article in ABC News about us, shared it with his friend over at the Vancouver Aquarium, and then we had a Zoom call with all of them, and that's how we started our friendship and relationship, and that's how we've gotten in contact with many of the people who we're talking to today, and many of the people who have been supporting us along the way. All of our sponsors, that's been through just emailing them, and each and every one of them has said yes so far. And we've also been applying for some grants as well, still waiting to hear on a couple of them, but it's just been overwhelming, the amount of support that we've received and the amount of help that people are willing to give. And like Lucy mentioned before, I think a lot of people want to get involved and on board with the ocean conservation side of things. It's an up and coming issue that's everyone's responsibility. Yeah.
I want to also give a shout out to Sue, who's on the line, Sue Bannister. Yeah. She's working with one of the schools who sent, she's waving now. sent questions in, but also like her is a sailor. If you don't know the background, she's that behind her is her sailing boat, which she lives on, which is my dream one day. But she's also given us is working to give us lots of tips and information about some of the areas we're paddling through. So yeah, it's just been great. Thanks for that, Sue. Yeah. So.
Yeah. I'll just talk about pledges. Yeah. So we're also trying to get people to undertake a pledge for the duration of our trip to go single-use plastic free. And there's been quite a few people who've expressed interest in that. And like we were saying before, there's quite a few schools that want to be involved. It also coincides with Plastic Free July. So see if we can tie that in. But what's also been really amazing and surprising is the amount of friends and friends of friends who have contacted us over the last couple of years just by following what we're doing. And I might not have spoken to a few of these people ever since high school, and they come in and say, hey, so I've been following everything you're doing and I want to go plastic free this year. So can I give you a call and we can chat about it and you can give me a couple of tips? And that's happened to both of us. And so one of the huge things that we've learned is that if you live a single-use plastic-free life, or you're campaigning for marine debris and things like that, people see that you're doing it and see that you're still living a very normal life in doing so, and normal life, and they can see that they can also join in and do the same thing. So, and that's amazing. People sending photos of, you know, making beeswax wraps with their kids and stuff makes us so much more happier than they'll ever know. So yeah, that's how much support that we've gotten over the last couple of years of planning has been amazing. I'd now like to take us over to Tom from Nature for All, the Nature for All campaign over in Canada. So this is one of our connections that we've gained through James, through the Vancouver Aquarium, and it's just been a ripple effect since our first conversation. So welcome, Tom.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for that awesome intro, for this great chat. Really exciting. So yeah, I guess where Nature for All fits into all this is essentially we're trying to start a global movement to inspire a love of nature. We've been sort of noticing that around the world, the whole issue of conservation sometimes gets a negative rap. There's so many negative stories out there and things like that. And we're really missing a very strong and important issue, which is, you know, if you don't fall in love with nature, if you don't have that moment in nature that inspires you to continue going out into it or try and protect it, you won't get involved in conservation and issues like that. So that's kind of on a very global scale where Nature for All fits in. We are a IUCN-led, which is the International Union for Conservation of Nature, campaign trying to inspire a love of nature. Our goal is to really bring in diverse, unique, new sectors into the whole conservation discussion without really talking about conservation, but taking a step back and saying, okay, let's really get back to basics and talk about love. And so we launched in 2016, and since then we've grown to over 230, I think we're nearing 240 partners from around the world, ranging from big organizations like UN Environment, IUCN, the Wildlife Association, what's the acronym? WASA, the Zoos and Aquarium, World Association of Zoos and Aquarium, that's it. Two very small scale local nonprofits who are doing really cool youth camps and things like that. And our sort of goal is to try and bring these groups together to have conversations around that core idea of, okay, well, what are you doing to really connect people to nature? And really, that's kind of what we're all talking about. So how can we collectively move that message on a very, very large scale? We've been coming together as various smaller coalitions, like Canada is a good example. OceanWise is one of our awesome partners. They were recently a part of a Canadian-wide coalition meeting, which brought together a lot of our Canadian partners to discuss what we want to do nationally. We've also had similar meetings across the UK, and we're looking at Australia as well. Yeah, so that's kind of Nature for All in a nutshell. Really trying to step back and focus in on that big idea that, before we discuss conservation, let's talk about love of nature. And there's sort of a lot of opportunities for individuals and organizations to get involved. We really like highlighting success stories from around the world. We have close to 50 now from various organizations, including the Shoreline Cleanup, that kind of highlight insider tips and sort of solutions and sort of key tips that help them connect their community to nature. Yeah, so that's us.
Thanks so much, Tom. And I think we're really excited to be a partner of Nature for All, and we'll be sending in a success story article soon, hopefully to share some of the successes we've had ourselves. In 6 weeks, I'm leaving Australia for Canada. Matilda's leaving in 3 weeks. We're so close now. It's so exciting. So if you have to leave, we just want to thank you so much for being a part of this. I'm just going to quickly unmute everyone, and then when you want to say something, you just have to put up your hand, and I will throw to you. And if you need to go, you can. I'm going to unmute Haiti so she can go first. Go, Haiti.
Oh. Super stoked to be part of this whole trip and this massive adventure, and so thankful for the support that you're showing to us. I am going to run because we've got another session to jump into, but happy to answer any questions that anyone might have about what we do. Feel free to send them on an email. Otherwise, I will talk to you guys later.
Bye, Haiti. Thank you.
Bye.
And Haiti joined us between sessions at the conference, so it was great to have her. Thanks, Haiti. So yeah, generally how we do this is just you put your hand like this, and then I'll point to you and say your name, and you can ask us questions. But also recognizing there's actually a lot of experience in the room. If anyone has suggestions for us, we also like that as well. So yeah, does anyone have anything they want?
I'll ask a question.
Yeah, go for it, Sue.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
We sure can.
Okay, so my question is, will you have a GPS on you that we can track on a map?
So that's actually, I might actually mute myself and let Matilda talk to this. We are in charge of separate parts of the paddle, and this is Matilda's section.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're going to have 10 people who will be receiving our spot tracker locations, and that sends them a location. We can set it to every couple of hours, for example, or every couple of minutes, but that's probably a bit much. And we're hoping to find a way to then put that on our website. But something that is extra exciting is that Marine Press, who have been helping us a lot with our charts and other navigation, things like that, they want to possibly use us as a case study to show on their website and trace basically our steps throughout the whole of our journey. And then we would have a link to that on our social media, would have a link to that on our website, and it would be on their website as well. So we'll see what happens in the next month and a half. But there will definitely be some way of tracking us, whether it's just knowing what campsites that we arrive at with a short, maybe 1 to 2 sentences, for example, oh my God, we saw 10 whales today. Or whether it would be like an actual tracing pretty much where the kayaks have been and hopefully moving in one direction and not out into the ocean.
Sounds good.
Yeah, and I think
Thank you.
also, just so you know, we'll have one person who's going to write 3 blogs for us along the way, and we'll be doing social media updates. So apart from the spot tracker / maybe marine press tracker, we'll also be, whenever we have receptions, sending you guys photos and updates and telling you how we feel. Yeah, all of the emotions.
Awesome.
Any more questions? So thanks for being a part of our first ever webinar.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe 40.
Thanks, guys. Great work.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
See you later.
Yeah, very exciting what you're doing. Thank you.
Thanks, Sue. Bye, Albert. Bye, Oliver. Bye, Dennis.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, Susan.